Ballpark Nation presents Extra Innings. All things baseball, movies, and, well, everything.
And welcome everybody to the third episode of Ballpark Nation. I'm here with my two amigos, Gary Warren and Emily Nyman. It's already been a week of baseball. And look, yes, I'm an Astros fan. No, I did not somehow channel Phil Maton to throw at three Rangers, although I feel really bad that it happened. Emily, Gary, how are y'all?
Fantastic.
Emily's doing better than me, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Emily's probably living her best life right now.
Okay, so let's
I can't believe it's happening.
Let's
It's
talk
only 5
about
games,
that though. We'll jump right into Astros Yankees. I think was a series I expected a split. That didn't happen. Different bounces, it's talking about a series of inches, but Emily, y'all are 5 games in, you're 5-0, which is the first time that's happened for the Yankees in a while. But you're also an old enough baseball fan to know you're not going to get over your skis on it. Are you just already planning your parade?
I'm planning my first week of the season parade, and I feel like after last year, I'm definitely going to be taking things. Well, it's more my personality to do this anyway, so it's not just last year, but especially after last year, I'm taking the season like one game at a time. And just like you, I was expecting a split, or at the very least hoping for a split. I would have been really, really happy if they went in there and they came out with a split with no Cole. And so obviously things went way better than I could have possibly imagined. I did not expect that at all. It made me feel really, really good about this team. And after last year, even though this team obviously was capable of this sort of play, since we just saw it, I was not ready for that. I was just thinking the worst, kind of, because last year really, really sucked. So I'm pretty thrilled, fellas.
Gary, you guys ran into the juggernaut that is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who, I mean, honestly, okay, again, we can't take anything out of 5 games, but look as good as advertised. Did it hamper your already negative outlook on the season?
It cemented my negative views. You know how you already have that precognition of things are gonna suck, and then it happens.
Don't
And
call
the
that a
Dodgers
self-fulfilling
delivered
prophecy,
that.
my friend.
Yeah, but I will say that the Dodgers look like $1 billion team. At least they look like they're living up to their cost. I'm curious to see how they play against better teams than the Cardinals, but the Dodgers really were strong. Cardinals they could have split it, and they blew it in, the bullpen lost it. The offense was bad, but I'm not quite sure yet whether it's Titanic, jump over the side, or things are going to be okay. It's early. It's early.
Well, it is early, and that's going to be the next topic. I obviously was disappointed in the series, but I almost look at March and then April baseball as I'm looking for nuggets to feel good about, or what could play out over the season. I think the big takeaway from the series with the Yankees was, one, the middle relief was a struggle. However, Fromber can't walk 9 people, whatever it was. He got lucked into some double plays, but then the luck ran out. You obviously would put Abreu, Presley, and Hader on the mound to win a game, even though all of them lost a game. It's not like you're going to change that. Although I did see some people questioning our manager as to why they did that. Well, you did it because you've paid them all the money. But I also felt like at the end of the day too, there were some games lost on errors and walks. So the Astros were at least right there. And I think we saw it get put together last night. Congratulations to Ronel Blanco, who was supposed to be in the bullpen until 3 days before the season started. Gets the opening start for the exhibition game as his wife delivers, and then throws a really efficient no-hitter. So I there's that to be positive about.
That's what baseball is about, right? Like those little things like that make us love baseball. It's just great.
I actually had a podcast idea about that. It was called the game of their life. and to try to get interviews with people who are players who had moments like that or games like that like chances are you're never going to really hear of Ronel Blanco in the annals of history beyond that no hitter. But there's so many players in the history of this game that have had that moment and had those sort of historic moments, but you don't remember their name at, a season or two later.
Well, wasn't there a no hitter too? Like right after Tyler Skaggs died, like the Angels did through like a combined no hitter or something. Like, yeah, that's kind of interesting how moments that should distract you actually end up galvanizing you and making you not focus on baseball, I guess, which is how you get good at playing baseball.
And I love that the Sam Raimi movie for Love or Money with Kevin Costner, which is all through him throwing that no hitter, but he reflects on his life and his relationships and
For
all
love of
that
the game,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
For
Oh
love of the
yeah,
game,
that's it. Yeah. And it's just that weird thing of this one day that could be the best day of someone's life.
It was so funny because before the ninth started, Jessica's like, I hope he went in there and said, clear the mechanism. And I was like, oh my God, this is why we're perfect for each other. One of the things that we've had on Go Go Astros, one of our rules is we don't look at the standings until Memorial Day. What about you guys?
That's
Gary,
hard.
are you like have you already looked at them?
Yeah, I've
Been
already
staring
looked
at 'em
at
all day.
them. I'm not, basing my year on them already, but I do feel like if you start in too great of a hole, it's hard to dig out. I almost feel like you can be too positive. Oh, I'm 5-0, 6-0, 7-0, and but if you start 0-6, 0-5, just digging your way out of that hole starts becoming a big deal.
Emily, he's got a point because didn't like Tampa started off like world record style last year and then really floundered. And I remember Andy on our pregame show saying that he thought they were a 500 team, and they pretty much kind of finished up as almost a 500 team.
Yeah, and I go right to thinking about the 2022 Yankees, to be honest, that their first half of the season, they were world beaters, and it was some of the best baseball I've seen them play in the last so many seasons. And it saved them in the second half of the season because they really just couldn't make up any ground and they just couldn't win games. But the big lead that they had gotten in their division kind of held them through that really tough patch. I don't know if you can really call it a patch. It was like 81 games, the tough 81 games of the second half.
The tough half.
Yeah, like it's easy for me as a fan that I've definitely been someone who's been on some, it's April, like chill, it's going to be fine. But the reality is that it's way better to be winning in April and be winning in May and, in March, because it's easier it's more difficult to have to try to make up ground because you need the other team to lose on the same days that you win. And where this is just, hey, you just got to maintain this spot and you can even lose a little bit of ground. But if you build up a big enough lead, sorry, my monitor keeps blinking and it's distracting me.
It's like
I don't know why it's doing that. But yeah,
it was highlighting what you were talking
important.
about. It was like you had special lighting happening.
It is.
Great.
I have the standings up here. It's just like blinking, but it's like not like that monitor. Just leave it in one spot.
One spot, please. Well, you're right though. I mean, obviously the I do start getting worried in May because I think that's when you reach the point of okay, you can't dig your way out if you're double digit back. You can scratch and claw. Of course, it's also different too now that there's not nearly as many divisional games, so it does become harder to dig your way out. It's easy to be down, like the Astros are down 2.5 games to the Rangers. Well, we have 19 to play, so
right.
But now it's 10 to play, so it does become a little bit. The margin of error gets smaller.
Yeah, I mean, for NL Central, it used to be, oh yeah, well we got beat up by all the other divisions, but we got like 35 games against the Brewers, Cubs, Pirates, and Reds, so we'll still win. And now when you have that, we're 9 games against every team. It's like every win or loss feels like it matters more.
Which I guess is the point, right?
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yeah. I think it's more fair. I don't really like it, but it's more fair.
Yeah. I don't love it.
Makes more sense.
I don't love it as a fan for the reason we just said. but it is kind of cool to be able to um, go to the ballpark, especially now that we have season tickets, and see teams we would not have normally seen. Um, like obviously we saw the Yankees this time, but the Braves are here next week. Like it's kind of neat to know that every other year you will have seen every team come through your ballpark. And I do think I think that's one of the things that was pretty smart about the schedule from a marketing perspective, whether or not diehards like Gary and I like the lack of competition that comes from it. Um, Especially when you're like, oh, great. Like for example, let's say the Astros had split with the Yankees. Well, we would have dodged the bullet because Cole's not there. And then Cole comes back, and then all of a sudden you sweep the Rangers. That's not fair. It's justice in what God wants,
Right.
but it's not fair.
But I'm still against interleague play. I cannot co-sign that. I hate it. Um, I like that the World Series was always, you played this one team you never ever saw, you never played. I don't know. I hate interleague play. I hate the way that it devalues that World Series championship.
I would, if the league had more parity in terms of like more teams trying, I would agree with that. And I would kind of like that just because of the novelty of it. And it makes it a little bit more fun, a little bit more mysterious. But because like half the league sucks and doesn't try and doesn't have to try, it makes sense to me to do it like this because you have divisions, and no offense, scary, but you have divisions like the NL Central where those fans are just seeing a bunch of shitty teams constantly. And when they're playing 19 games against all these crappy teams, it kind of drives down attendance beyond the fact that their team also sucks. But when you have you guarantee that they're going to play the Yankees, even if they don't come to town, they're going to go to New York and play the Yankees, or they're going to play the Dodgers or the Astros. Like that gets a fan base more engaged in the sport, and that is kind of a good thing, with the exception of it letting these shitty owners just kind of get away with this.
Yeah, which I think I can kind of agree, wink, wink, because I feel like these shitty owners should not be able to like get that free Yankees money,
Oh
get the
yeah.
Red
Oh, that's a
Sox
good point.
money. I feel like they should put a competitive team out on the field and not rely on Aaron Judge is coming to town, Shohei Ohtani is coming to town,
Yeah.
like that we're going to sell, 80,000 tickets based on somebody way better than we'll ever sign.
I don't disagree with that at
Yeah, that's an
all.
interesting idea because it almost leads to like I've seen the idea of like how cool would it be if Major League Baseball had sort of a relegation process like you see in soccer. I have always
Oh,
been
the A's would be relegated for like they would
well,
never get
in
back.
the
I'm
A's
not
are
familiar with the
almost
relegation process. Can you just give a quick synopsis of what you mean?
so in soccer in Europe, you have to be good to stay in the top league, and if you aren't, you get knocked down and another team gets
Mm.
brought up. So it's your incentive to keep playing whether or not you think you can sign like Messi or whoever. He's a soccer player, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
So
like, wait, first slow up. I
keep
need an
talking. You're
explanation of soccer
confident
and
still.
Europe. Never heard of either of those things.
yeah, right. Football. But no, that's what they do. And there's like three levels. I mean, it's kind of interesting. And I only know this because of Ted Lasso and
Ted
Welcome to
Lasso.
Wrexham. But like they have kind of like baseball where like you have like six soccer teams just in London. Like every neighborhood has like their thing. And at any given time, you can be playing like at the Champions level or the Premier League or whatever it is. And there's been some suggestion of that. I love that we're on this topic because I have a controversial take on how to drive competition, and I think it goes back to Major League Baseball's ultimate problem is that owners are short-sighted, and they're okay with Major League Baseball being four teams and 26 other people that are unmarketable. They're okay with their Yankees, Red Sox, Cubs, and Dodgers, let's say. I think that you have to have a salary floor and a cap in Major League Baseball. And I think the benefit of the cap, because I know Emily, you're anti-cap. And it's okay. Because I always look at the the thing that made the NFL the juggernaut it is now was the cap. Like it used to be
Yeah.
where The Cowboys were just buying everybody. And then before them, the 49ers were. And then they made the cap happen. And all of a sudden, teams are sort of compelled to spend up to, but not over that amount of money. And I think
Yeah, you
looking
wouldn't
at
have
the
the
growth of the
Chiefs.
league, that's the way to do it.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a Chiefs dynasty right now without the cap because those stars would have gone elsewhere.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe I think baseball should have one. But there also has to have that you can't
The
do
floor.
the Shohei Ohtani, I will get paid $700 million over the next 200 years of my life. Like, there has to still be some sort of like hard, fast rule over what your payroll is.
I would even be okay, Emily, staying with what they have now as far as the flexible sort of cap where you can go for it and pay a penalty. But I do think a floor has to be part of the equation. Otherwise, the game is just going to slowly strangle itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think a floor is a bad idea, but there's no incentive nearly for both sides to ever bring a cap to the table, especially now the owners they make their own soft cap and they get to funnel that money right back into the pockets of the owners. And it's an excuse to drive down salary because instead of spending that penalty money on salaries, they can spend it on penalties. And then it just artificially regulates that market. So
yeah, it's like, why would Congress vote for term limits?
it's essentially the
where
same
it's
thing.
like,
Yeah.
when these owners, regardless of if they're the Yankees or the A's, they're making millions and millions of dollars. Why rock the boat?
The
And not to
Astros-
mention,
Go ahead.
sorry,
Go
but
ahead.
just baseball is a sport that even without the cap, like with the exception of, obviously the Yankees dynasty in the late 90s, early 2000s, there's been like, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's been a bunch of different teams that have won World Series. And it's because unlike football, unlike hockey, unlike basketball, you can't put the ball or the bat in the hands of your best player when the game is on the line. The best player isn't always going to come through for you in the same percentages that they're going to in those other three of the big four sports. So I think that alone kind of makes the cap in and of itself a little unnecessary, just because spending money doesn't guarantee anything. Look at the Mets, look at the Padres, and that they're not the first teams that have spent a lot of money and kind of just shit the bed at the end of the day. So I'm not saying that that's a perfect argument for it, but the sport is so different that it's tough to compare anything that the other sports do, even to this, even on the business side, because the outcomes aren't the same for the same reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point. We're all shocked the Dodgers look like the Dodgers are supposed to look like, because so often those teams with it's just basically hired guns don't really bring it together. I don't know. I mean, I think it's so weird to me because you're exactly right. There hasn't been a repeat World Series champion since the Yankees in the early aughts. So, but you watch like history of baseball stuff and you see like the Royals used to be really good and the Reds used to be really good and the Pirates, the We Are Family stuff. And now for all that tradition, they've left it in the hands of non-baseball people who treat this just like an investment. And I'll give you a case in point, because the Astros are staring down a Bregman contract and a Tucker contract. The Astros just, I think, were the highest percentage of value increase over the last number of years, and they pretty much doubled it. They're worth now $2.5 billion. My local Houston Astros. I remember when the value when John McMullen owned the team was actually the payroll we have now, like $180 million. But that money, like you said, is not going to end up in the pockets of Tucker or Bregman because they're up against that artificial cap and they don't want to spend the money or draft capital to bring those guys back.
And time, that is the greatest piece of leverage that owners have over players. That, okay, you don't want to come to this team with this at this amount. I don't care if we're bad for 5 years, because I'm still going to own this team in 5 years and you're going to be on the wrong side of 30 in 5 years. So what do you know? The owners, they can just wait it out because the fans are always there. They always come back. The minute the team becomes good again, they'll come back and fill those stadiums. And I'm not implying that they shouldn't. That is the best time to enjoy your team, is when they're good. And bandwagon fans aren't a bad thing. Teams don't deserve a full stadium when they're shitty. But it's just, that is something that will never go away. And unfortunately, like you said, Jim, is that it's more about capitalism now, and it's less about love of the game, and it's less about pride of the city and the team, and this little ecosystem that the owners have built works for them. The teams that have been around for 110 years, they're making all the money for the league, and then the teams at the bottom have agreed to be bottom feeders because they'll just feed back the draft picks to the top teams, and it's just around and around we go.
Yeah, Gary, before you get your final take on that, one of the things that did leak out is that really the concern the Astros have isn't the cap, but or the money part of it. It's the lost draft capital because they had missed picks from the 19 scandal. And that's how you build, right? Is you really do build mostly through your farm system. To me, I want to, I realize the window is closing. I'd rather at least see Bregman get to hang around and do that thing. Last bit on this topic from you, Gary, before we jump into something a little different.
My big question really is with this entire free agent offseason we had with Scott Boras, right? Where, Scott Boras is the agent of agents, but every single one of his clients ended up taking less money for like a shorter term. And I wondered, did all the owners kind of get together and just say we're not going to sign these big number guys? We're going to make them take a 2-year deal, a 1-year deal. And if that is the case, is that fair?
Yeah, Emily, you can chime to this because I know you have feeling, and I'll follow up.
Yeah, I think you're right on the nose with that one, Gary. That if the biggest, the most obvious collusion that we were in, like this era of collusion among the owners, was the fact that Bryce Harper and Manny Machado didn't get signed until like spring training, and they were 26 years old when they reached free agency, 2 all-time players, and they sat on the market with their just sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. So we saw that even more this season, and it's not going to get any better. This is my very cynical and tinfoil hat opinion on all this, is that every move that we see make, from the collusion with free agents to the shrinking of the player names on the back of the jerseys, everything is done with the intention of breaking the union. And the owners are always trying to do
Don't forget reducing the minor leagues by 2 teams each, which means you're reducing your bargaining power.
Everything is done with that in mind.
You can thank the Astros for that. I don't take a lot of bullshit about trash cans, but the Astros absolutely are the ones who drove home this. Why do we need a minor league system? We have computers.
Yeah, and that's just what I feel like the union, the players union, is really fighting against, is trying to remain cohesive, and it's getting more and more difficult because the owners are going to just put more and more pressure on them.
I just wish that owners saw like what Crane clearly learned, which was, hey, if you win, you actually do make more money.
Yeah.
Like winning, you make more money. Why are you satisfied with an incremental increase, like you said, from TV dollars versus everybody gets in the playoffs now? So go for it every now and again. You might be surprised.
All about value. I mean, even the A's have gone up in value. They've been absolutely horrid. So it's all about just, this team can make you a billionaire. You buy a team, you can scrape that money together, get a group together. This now is yours. And no matter what, it is recession proof. It is like the most sure thing buying one of these North American sports league teams. So there's no incentive. It's like, what do they care if it doesn't make any money this year? It's still going to go up in value. And then when they sell it, they can still sell it at top dollar, even if they only won 50 games for the last half a decade.
Yeah, I kind of view it almost like the way that corporate America has taken over Hollywood, right? Where all of the studios are now ran by these corporate people that just want to make money. They don't care about movies. They don't care about art. They just want to make money. They'd rather They would rather shelf Batgirl and make a tax loss, which is a profit. And I feel like we're getting that same kind of thing with a lot of the owners, where they're now like, baseball, schmaseball, who cares? Eventually we'll make a ballpark village. We will get a new stadium. We'll get a new deal with, whatever. It doesn't matter if we win or lose, we're going to make money. And I know that lifelong baseball fans like all of us will stick around, but I do think with a sport like baseball that is struggling to bring in new fans, that this kind of thing will not do.
Emily, he talks about that, and the key thing really is young fans. And I go back to again to the minor league thing. How many fans of baseball become a fan because they're 7 and they go to like Star Wars night at a ball game and they find this thing that is cool, and now there's just less of that opportunity. And by the way, apparently there's been proposed that another reduction is coming where you're just going to have an A, double A, and triple A team.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's to grow the game, you have to show the game, and that comes down to having minor league teams. Comes down to removing blackout restrictions. You have to expose fans to the game. I mean, that's why the Cubs, the Yankees, the Dodgers, they are some of the largest, the Braves, some of the largest fan bases. The Cubs didn't win anything for a long time, but they have a huge fan base because they were on CBS or something for all those years. So they were like the only teams that were being shown nationally on like a regular basis before what we have now, the regional sports networks, MLB TV. So we already saw like the proof of what happens when you show the game, how big fan bases can get just from being able to watch the games. Even if they're not that good and they don't win anything, it will still give you lifelong fans. So, but like Gary said, and like we've been saying, it's not about bringing in fans. It's just about bringing in customers. And I know that that's like, seems like
I love that. That's great.
Semantics, but it is, it's not, we don't see ourselves as customers, but that is how we're being treated. And there is a line there that there's a difference there, and there should be a difference, but doesn't feel like it anymore.
I mean, to your point though, like when Jessica grew up in San Antonio, which is about 4 hours from Houston, 4 hours from Dallas, she got neither Astros nor Rangers games, but I got all the Cubs games she could handle. And so like where the logic in that is, I don't get.
Yeah, it was like WGN and TBS. You got all the Cubs and all the Braves, regardless of where you lived.
And good on them for figuring that out. Like they were ahead of their time when it came to, hey, if you put this on TV, people actually like to watch it.
And at least the Braves won.
Until they met the Yankees.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to say, I actually have the bobblehead of the Astros finally beating the Braves in a playoff game. Almost 20 years ago. Oh, my God. I do, before we move on to the last thing, though, I do feel bad for Oakland A's fan because they are a team with a really, really long, rich tradition of winning and also continuously screwing over their fan base. And, there's no excuse for it. It's gross. I actually know the guy that set up the 2 different, boycott games that they've had both at the end of last year and this year. And I just feel for him because he's an old guy who's been watching the A's for 40 years or whatever it is. And they're going to go to Vegas and he's left without a team. But speaking of which, so right now the Astros, A's, the Blue Jays and Rays, the White Sox, the Marlins, the Cardinals, and the Rockies have one thing in common. They're all last place in their divisions. Which of those teams do you think have a puncher's chance of getting out of that spot? I'm not giving up on any of my World Series predictions, so I feel like the ones I picked, but are there any teams like Emily, like you're like, oh, okay, that's actually a warning flag that this might be the season where you don't get out of it? I'm sorry, which one do you think will get out of it? Excuse me, because I think we all know the A's are staying there.
I mean, I think. Wait, can you list that team again? You listed like half the league, so I can't remember. I'm trying to desperately bring up the standings to look at it myself.
Here are the teams.
I'm stalling like a kid.
Which of these teams do you think won't be there at the end? And that'll be the Astros, the A's, the Blue Jays, the Rays, the White Sox, the Marlins, the Cardinals, and the Rockies.
I mean, I think that basically like the first 5 or 6 teams won't be there. The Blue Jays, the Astros, the Rays. Like, I think that the majority of those teams are not going to be at the bottom. I think that the White Sox probably won't either. And that's not to say they necessarily don't deserve to be down there, but that division is a mess. So it's hard to say. Or maybe they will, because I think the Twins are a little bit better than them. But I think that all the teams that are funny to be at the bottom at this time of the year just like it's funny for guys, like Jordan or Judge to not be playing well because that they're going to get it right. So it's like the teams that it's funny to see them there and you want to rib on their fans. Those are the teams that won't be there by the end of the year.
I hope that Jordan does a good job with the Chicago Dogs of the All-America of the American Division baseball because he's apparently been cut by Astros Twitter. Gary, what about you? Any of those teams down there that you're like, oh, I know for sure they're not going to be last?
I think it is that thing where as a fan, I know as an Astros fan for you and a Cardinals fan for me, we're like, oh yeah, we're probably going 0 and 162. This year sucks. It's horrible. Let's just go ahead and like grab the shotgun.
Oh my
But
God.
I felt like that against the Dodgers. But I think that the decent teams will move ahead. I think of the teams you listed, the A's, of course, will be in the cellar, and I think the Marlins as well is another team that somehow made the playoffs last year and won't this year. Everyone other than that, I think will do better than their current record shows.
Okay, last thing to talk about then. We're going to go back to the NL Central. Brewers, Mets. We have a slide. Jeff McNeil gets taken out. To me, it looked not intentional. To me, it looked awkward. To me, like it felt like I forgot who was the one that was. Oh, Ryan Hoskins was sliding. I feel like he almost immediately came up and apologized. Much ado about nothing, or is this the kind of season we're going to have where we're just going to see shorter and shorter fuses? Emily, we'll let you go first.
I think much ado about nothing. I think it was a perfect storm in that Rhys Hoskins was just on the Phillies, and now he's on the Brewers. So Mets fans hate him because of his association with the Phillies. I think that Mets fans are also and Mets players that players will use anything to get themselves fired up. And the Mets are kind of dead in the water right now. So I feel like that was a perfect situation to lean into and to try to light a fire. But I don't think that it was intentional. It was like game 2 or game 3 of the season. Yeah. The Mets and the Brewers, there's no bad blood there. So I don't think that Rhys Hoskins was going in spikes up like Ty Cobb or anything like that.
Right.
So.
What about you, Gary?
100%. Yeah, everything. I just quote Emily. Yeah, she said it all.
My bad.
Kind of thing where it's like, I think teams try to fire themselves up any way they can. And if you ask me, I don't care about interference at all. I like the days when the second baseman was blocking the bag and had to be tackled by the guy stealing second. So I feel like a lot of these new rules are soft, but I'm not playing, so whatever.
Well, we're not playing. This has been a great episode, Gary and Emily. You can tell it's been a great episode because we didn't get to nearly half of what I wanted to talk about.
It was next week.
Yeah, it was always next week, and I feel like we're going to keep talking baseball economics for a while, but we will be back next week. So enjoy the next week of baseball, and remember, everybody, if you're not doing well with your team right now, put away the shotgun, get those paper bags, so you can stop panicking.
It might be too late. Next week, they'll just be like the gravestone.
Gary. Here lies Gary.
Our viewership will go down because everybody followed Gary's advice and lemminged off the bridge. We will see you next week. Enjoy some baseball, y'all.